Hey, besties and bosses, happy Tuesday. I want to say it's my favorite time of the week because I love when we get to hang out, but that's not true because I also love when I get to hang out with my clients. So it's one of my favorite times of the week, but I am excited for our conversation today and just to dive in. For those of you hopping on now or later, I know a few of you have been asking about the replay for Words That Sell, and someone else was asking about the replay for the live on how to use Facebook groups to get fully booked. I have decided we will leave the Words That Sells replay up a little bit longer, so don't worry, hang now if you want to watch this one, and you can catch that later. And I will drop a link for that live on how to use Facebook groups to get fully booked under here. And it is also, if you ever want to catch any of the lives, they're all saved in the group. If you look under videos, they're all underneath there. I think you can search by keywords as well, but they're always saved under there. So just a little heads up for you if you want to catch those replays. So hang for this one. Those replays will remain. I'm not going to pull them down. If you're hopping on now, say hi. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how you're feeling. I think the noise online this week has been holy shit. It is the second half of 2020. We're officially in the second half of the year. And people love to make a big deal out of that. And yes, that's true. And in some ways, like, holy shit, it's the second half of the year. And I think in other ways, it's another day, and that's going to be a part of our conversation, how that can create its own mindset noise. But how are you all doing? How's the first half of the year been treating you? How are you feeling? What I want to chat about today is, yes, I shared here that I had a result this first half of the year. My business, Kim Market Singer Coaching, closed out $100K in cash, meaning it's more, whenever we say cash received, by the way, in business, that means money that's been received into the business, not sales. And I think it can be confusing in the online space. Sales would actually be more because that's what people will still pay me throughout the year. But that's what in the first half of 2020, what my business received. And I want to talk about a simple shift I made in my business that helps that be possible, that has been something I've been working on behind the scenes for a really long time. And one of my promises to all of you in this group and to my clients is always to keep it really real and transparent as possible, to share what actually goes on behind the scenes and to keep things as simple as possible. And yes, of course, if you've been hanging out with me, you know I believe what goes into business success and creating money doing what you love is all about clarity, mindset, strategy, and action. We're not going to cover all of the things today, and I'm not implying on this live that this one thing is the one thing that made me money in my business, because that's a bunch of BS. However, the shift I want to share today is one of the things I have done a massive amount of work around, and it is something I do reviews of my business every quarter, and I don't just look at numbers. I really try to look under the hood and see what's created certain results. And this is one thing I can pinpoint the growth in my business to. And it's something I can pinpoint back to the start of my business, to why it was such a struggle bus, crunchy, felt so hard and challenging at the start of my business, and some of the things that helped my business to start growing really quickly when I shifted this piece. And it's also something I am having conversations with clients around so much, and I give them a lot of support around, because as most of you know, if you've ever done this kind of work, the things we've had to move through are usually the easiest for us to spot in other people. And this is something I think comes up a lot for high achievers, comes up a lot for entrepreneurs, and I think quite honestly in the online space, comes up a lot in the online space. Hey Stephanie, so nice to have you here. Always love seeing your face. So I really want to have a conversation around this, because I'm going to share with what it is in a moment, and then I'm going to share how it's shown up for me in business, how that shift has shown up. I want to share a little bit, give you some examples outside of business, and then I want to share how we shift this pattern. I'm teasing this out for a moment, because when I share it, I think it's almost going to sound too simple. And it is one of those concepts that I think is really counterintuitive. I know when I started doing my work around this, I had so much resistance, because I really believe society teaches us the opposite of what we're going to talk about today. And I think because society teaches us the opposite, and there's such a narrative around the opposite, and as high achievers, especially from a young age, there's a pattern that can be created around, I think this pattern we're going to talk about creates a lot of feelings of safety, false feelings of safety. I think that you're going to hear this and you're going to be like, I don't know about that, Kim. So hang with me, because I really and truly think this is game-changing in business, and it's game-changing in your personal life. I'm going to share some personal examples, relationships, health, how this has affected me there. Let's see. Courtney says, hey, Stephanie. Hey, Tiffany. You guys are so sweet. I love how y'all are engaging with one another. I love you all. I love this group. Okay, so without further ado, I'm like totally teasing the crap out of this because I'm doing my job teasing out this live stream. But what I have found, or the pattern I had to shift that really allowed my business income, and we're talking, I've been in business for a while, so this is from being on the struggle bus, feeling like I was literally up till 3 a.m. doing all the things, and like, y'all, talking about like feeling frustrated, I felt like, yes, I was making money in my business, but it was like so tight and crunchy and hard, and every dollar I made, it is like I fucking fought for that dollar. If anyone has ever felt that way, you are not alone. The shift from there to all of a sudden waking up and being like, wait, how did I go from there to fully booked to then 10K months to then 20K months to then making 100K in 6 months? Like, how did that happen? And the piece that I have done a massive amount of mindset work around is releasing the pressure valve. And I want to break down what that means. Something I find for high achievers, and if you are my client, I am not singling you out. I promise you, I'd say I have around 20 clients at any given time. 18 at any given time, we're having this conversation around releasing pressure. So for anyone watching now or on the repeat, I'm not like bringing your session to this live stream. It's just that prevalent for high achievers, and it's just that prevalent in business. And the pattern I see show up over and over and over again that I think is really counterintuitive to break is that the pattern of putting pressure on yourself and believing and having the subconscious story that when I put pressure on myself, that's what I need to perform. That's what I need to be able to get results. And those results mean something about me. And so it creates this vicious loop, because the results feel really pressurized, right? Because the results have so much meaning. If I make money, if I book clients, if I reach a certain level in my business, if we look outside business, if I get into a relationship, if I get married, if I lose weight, if I hit a certain number on the scale, if I buy a certain house, all of these things become very pressurized because there's a meaning attached to them. Then I'm finally good enough. Then people will like me. Then I will like myself. Then I'll actually fill in the blank, right? There can be a lot of story around when I get this result, it means X, and that's where the pressure comes from. And it creates this pressure cooker situation. And the mechanism in the brain thinks the only way I'm going to get that result, and I need that result to feel that way, the only way I'm going to get that result is by applying a lot of pressure to myself. Because society teaches us, who's heard that quote? A diamond is just a piece of coal that did really well under pressure. Anyone else heard that quote? And it's like, yeah, that's true, except for humans aren't coal. You are not a piece of coal. But that is the narrative that is in our world, that diamonds, successful people, get there because they put a lot of pressure on themselves. In the online space, there's a lot of pressure tactics used in marketing. You got to reach this income goal to be good enough, right? I mean, like, I know for me, like full transparency, so much work I've had to do at this stage of my business is around releasing the pressure for my business to look a certain way, because I could very easily fall into the trap of my business is supposed to have a group program and it's supposed to be scaling a whole hell of a lot faster for me to feel good enough and to tell you why I'm good at my job, right? That's the narrative online. Things need to look a certain way to feel a certain way. And the only way to get that is by putting pressure on yourself. Even in the coaching space, and I want to read these comments in a second, we hear a lot about goals, right? Smart goals. And smart goals, which if you've ever heard me talk about them before, we won't talk about that today. I got a whole lot of problems with smart goals. I think they work in certain instances, but a lot of times smart goals are just another pressure tactic, right? You have to hit something really measurable by a certain amount of time, or you have failed, or you are not good enough, or you didn't follow through. And what this does is it creates so much pressure that high achievers, and I was talking to a coaching friend about this who was describing this pattern as something that's also a trauma response, because it creates a lot of safety for some people. It's like if we're always in that go pressure mode, it almost feels safer than chilling the F out. And so the mechanism in business becomes put more pressure on, put more pressure on, put more pressure on to get that result to feel a certain way. Except pressure doesn't create results. Unless you're a piece of coal, pressure does not create success. I do not know a single business owner, and I do not know a single area in life where more pressure equals sustainable results. I want to read these comments in a second. Yes, pressure can create results in the short term. If you want to lose weight, you can pressure yourself in a diet, right? And you will lose weight short term. However, that pressure, if that diet is coming from a pressurized place, what happens? Either it's not sustainable. As soon as you take that pressure off, you binge and eat all the pizza and Doritos in the entire world and you hate yourself for it, or you have an eating disorder. Neither one is really all that good, right? If we take a look at relationships, you can absolutely pressure your way into a romantic relationship. That happens all the time. And who's either been in a relationship with a whole lot of pressure or seen friends be in a relationship that has a whole lot of pressure? What happens? It breaks under pressure. If you've ever, like, and this is no judgment, I think it's just, again, this is something the human brain does. It's very, very normal because, again, we learn this is how I can get what I want. But who hasn't known that person who has so much pressure put on, like, I gotta get married, I gotta get married, I gotta get married. And so every relationship has so much pressure. And what happens? Either they force someone into getting married and they're divorced a few years later, or the marriage has a lot of problems, or they don't understand why they're always single, and their friend who is not putting nearly any pressure on meets someone and is engaged 6 months later. I'm sure you've all experienced or seen this phenomenon before. That's because pressure does not create results in any area of life, particularly business. And I want to show what this looks like. Let me read these comments. Let's see. Stephanie says, please break that down. This is so needed for me right now. I will break this down more. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm so glad that this is resonating. Stephanie says, I think you're tagging Tanika. Courtney says, I've been really working on this aspect really hard. It doesn't come naturally. I love you for sharing that. I think it does not come naturally, Courtney, for, quite honestly, I think anyone who's high achieving, and like, I think there's different reasons we create this pattern, especially if there is something in anyone's life where it's like, I have learned this is a way I get my esteem, like esteem from other people, or this is a safety mechanism and it just feels safer to do. I think this is very, 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 very normal, and that creates a hard pattern to break. And then the irony is, right, if we know this is a pattern and we're trying to break it, what happens? Part of it is, and suddenly we're putting pressure on ourselves to break the pattern of pressure. And so it's just like a new way the pressure shows up. Super normal. I thank you so much for being transparent because I think it helps other people to identify. Courtney says, yes, without the pressure and hustle, I've been conditioned to learn that I'm not trying hard enough. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Tinley says, Courtney, 100% agree with you. I've been struggling with this recently. Y'all, I love you so much for being so transparent. I'm gonna, like, I will share some of the ways this has looked for me because I really honor all of you sharing this, and I want to share how normal this is and just breaking this down a little bit and what this looks like. So outside of business, here's some really great examples. I'm using the eating and the relationship example because, so if you rewind the tape to, gosh, I can't do maths, y'all. I sound British, maths. I have been in business, let's see, I've been in New York City for 6 or 7 years. So probably about 10 years ago, I ended a relationship that was 9 years long, and I was single for the first time in my adult life. And y'all, I did not know how to date, and I put so much pressure on myself around what I thought dating was supposed to look like, and it was miserable. Like, this is not the point of this conversation, but just to say miserable, miserable, miserable. And I'm going to talk about how I shifted out of the pressure piece, and we're going to talk about that at the end because I think there's 2 pieces that are really important. The second, I'm talking about within 1 week of when I released the pressure and I did the work I'm going to share with you to shift that. Within 1 week, I met the man who's in the other room who is my soulmate, and like, I love him. He's also really dreamy, y'all. But we had connected on a dating app 6 months prior. I always tell him, I give him a hard time for not asking me out sooner, but I always tell him that, quite honestly, if he had met me during that time, we probably wouldn't be together. And part of that reason is I don't think I was ready because of all that pressure I was putting on myself and where the pressure came from. So if we break down where pressure comes from, pressure, I believe, it comes from us thinking external sources are going to validate us and give us what those results are going to give us. So if we, let's use the dating as an example. I know this is so annoying and so cliche, and this is for dating and it's for business too. I'm sure you could look at someone like me who's single and who's like crashing and burning and dating, like embarrassing y'all. And you could say, well, first you got to release the pressure. And to release the pressure, you got to love yourself a little bit more. And you got to be happy being single. I remember someone telling me, they're like, you just got to find yourself. And I wanted to smack them upside the effing head, because I was like, find myself. I know how to I found myself. And the truth was, they were right. For me to release the pressure and for me to be in that place to meet that awesome guy in the other room, I had to tap into, how can I love myself a whole lot to the point where I don't need it. Not like I don't need a man, but where I didn't need anyone else to be happy. And how could I find a way to be so happy and so in love with my life in the now where I didn't need anything else? And that was how the pressure got relieved, right? Because the only reason I was putting pressure on dating wasn't like I had met someone that amazing. I was meeting, like, quite honestly, kind of dirtbags. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like that was where the pressure was coming from. The pressure was coming from my brain thinking, I need this thing to happen so I can feel a certain way. And that is just the backwards way to get anything. What I had to do was the work around, no. I gotta feel a certain way, which is I gotta love myself, and I have to be so freaking in love with my life and being single. I remember the week we met, I remember actually thinking, you know what? I could be single for the next 10 years. This is amazing. And it's not a coincidence that, of course, the next week when we met, everything was aligned properly, because I was so happy with where I was at and there was zero pressure on making something work. And the same exact mechanism applies to business. So much pressure gets put on business and business results because we think we need that pressure to perform. I need pressure so that I can actually show up and put out my content. I need to put pressure on making a certain income amount because some mindset person said, if you don't have that goal, you're not gonna make a certain amount of money. I will let you in on a big secret. Anytime I have a big income month, I've actually lowered my income goal because it takes the pressure off, right? I need to be obsessed with being good enough in my business and doing a certain amount of work every single day because I need that pressure to show up, and that's the only way I'm going to get results. And that never creates sustainable success, ever, 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 because what happens? Either you show up in your content or on your calls like grippy, desperate, and what does that do? That pushes people away. Or you get some results and you burn the F out because you're not a piece of coal and doesn't create diamonds. It burns people out. And that's where you see, we see this in the online space all the time, right? Businesses that are doing really well, and then they're doing well. And then all of a sudden you're like, what happened to that person I was following? They just disappear, or they just burn their business down. There's been a lot of this, if you've been noticing in the last year and a half, a lot of big business owners just burning their businesses to the ground. I believe a lot of it is because so much pressure was behind their business that pressure led to, pressure, if you're not a piece of coal, makes something snap. Hold on, I want to read these comments. Tanika says, Stephanie, oh, thank you. She says, looking beautiful, Kim. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm going to receive that compliment. Thank you. Stephanie says, that's good. Yep, that's how it works. Tanika says, yes, agree with the external sources making us feel less than. It feels like imprisonment. That is such a great way to describe it. It feels like imprisonment. Y'all, you're all heart-centered, passion-driven. Did anyone start their business to feel imprisoned? Right? I think one of the reasons everyone starts their business is for freedom, right? Financial freedom and to have freedom. And yet, unintentionally, coming from a really good place, we create our own our own imprisonment by the way we think and the way we run our business. And then we feel trapped and we feel frustrated. We feel all this pressure, and then the results aren't coming in, and it creates this vicious cycle, right? Because pressure to perform, trying to perform under that, because we think the result's going to create a certain feeling, the result doesn't come in. So then what happens? It just keeps going. It's like, then I need more pressure. If I just put some more pressure on myself, and then it just keeps going until one day you're like, I hate this shit. Why am I doing this? Or why does this feel so hard? And then someone hops online, they're like, I just made 100K in 6 months, and it was the easiest 6 months I've ever had. And you want to flip them the bird. But I think, and that's why I want to be so transparent around this, it did not always feel this way in my business. The reason I am having those results, yes, okay, again, I'm not saying this is the only thing. Yes, there is strategy. Yes, there are other mindset components. Yes, I'm taking action. Yes, all of those pieces. But a really big piece, if you take a look at my business, for anyone who's been hanging out with me for a while, my strategy has not changed much. I've been in business for this is embarrassing. I don't know if it's 4 or 5 years, but I've been in business for a while. My strategy has barely changed. I essentially rinse, refine, and repeat my strategy, which is what I coach my clients to do. So it just gets easier and easier. My strategy hasn't changed that much. The topics I'm talking about haven't changed all that much. I had an Instagram, one of those like Instagram, what do you call it? Memories pop up on Instagram yesterday. And it was a conversation, like a interview I had done at the start of my business 4 years ago. And it was on a topic I literally am still talking about. That's how much things have not changed in my business. The main thing that has changed is the mindset. And a big piece of the mindset work has been, how do I consistently dismantle this story and that I need to use pressure as a way to perform? And how do I sit in the discomfort of letting it be easy? And I think that sounds really confusing. But what I know, and I think Courtney was talking about how difficult earlier, how difficult it is to stop applying that pressure. What I have found for myself to be true, and for clients as we work through this, is it's when you have a pattern, when you have a mindset pattern, the reason our brain creates patterns is we have learned something at a certain age, and we have learned that is the way to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and essentially to be safe. And for a lot of us who are high achievers, we have learned pressure is the way to get my needs met, and pressure is safe. If I'm like, without pressure, I don't feel safe because I'm not gonna be able to show up and do the things to get those external rewards that I want, right? So there's a lot of safety we feel, even if it's not true safety, we feel a lot of safety from that pressure. Even if the pressure kind of feels crunchy, it's like it still feels good because we know what to do with it, right? Does that resonate with y'all? And so when you start to release the pressure and do the work to feel really good now and to love on yourself and to remove some of the pressure from results, it is wildly uncomfortable. And what I have found is when you really do that work, results start coming in a lot faster. And the brain is almost like, wait, this is not how this is supposed to work. Let me put on the brakes. Hold on. And I think that's where this work is really fascinating and where having support is so important, because you'll start to do the work. You'll start to see that magic of, oh, when I love on myself and I'm really okay with where things are at and I'm removing the pressure, I'm telling you, business starts to feel like magic. Because just think about it. What would happen if you're creating content and there's no pressure around it? So much more flowy, right? What happens if you do live streams and you remove the pressure? I mean, I'm having so much fun. What happens if you get on a sales call and there's no pressure to book the client? Imagine how that would feel on a call. For me, I swear, I think sales calls are magic, and I have people cry on them regularly, like happy tears. But I think part of it is there's zero pressure for me to book a client or on that person to work with me. And so if you think about how that would affect your business, it's like, oh, of course, less pressure equals magic in my business. And of course, the irony is then the results are going to come flowing in. And then I think the real work becomes doing the work to let that be okay, and to let it be okay that things are coming in without that pressure and without doing as much work. Because the other thing I know to be true, if you're like me and if you're a high achiever, is we get a little bit of a feel-good feeling, is that a word? From doing work, from things being hard. I know I grew up in a family of high achievers, and there's just a little bit of something we get by like boasting about how hard it was to do something. You just don't get nearly the same like applause, external applause, when you're like, well, that was really easy, right? And I think whether we realize it consciously or subconsciously, that's also where some of the pattern of pressure comes from, because we know if I put pressure on myself and I make this hard and I try to use this as the mechanism to get results, I'm also going to get that external validation or love, either because it was hard for me to do or just because I'm working so hard, and then people will tell me to take a break. It's like the only way we know how to take a break. Hold, let me read these comments. Tiffany says, how can we change this? If I don't shift something soon, I think I might snap. I love you for being so honest, Tiffany. Courtney says, the pressure also comes from little to no cash flow. There's a cyclical pattern of money equals little pressure on myself. Little to no money equals big time pressure. Both of you, I appreciate you for sharing this. I think this is the perfect segue, because I think that's absolutely right. I think if you're watching this, I think two things come up. I think we can hear, okay, what do we do with this? And what does no pressure mean? And you're talking about letting it be easy. And I think the brain can almost go, but what does that mean? Does that mean I don't care? Does that mean I don't show up? Like, what in the actual F does that mean? And I think the other thing that can come up is like, well, it's easy for you to say, Kim, because you just told us you had a great 6 months in your business. So there is no pressure to make money. And so I love you both for bringing this up. What I will say is that is not true. I think at any stage of business, this pattern can come up. And Courtney, just to speak to what you're saying, like I had to, like, to get to here, I had to do the work when I was like hanging on my nails, like trying to claw into my business, because it felt so challenging. I was living, I don't know how many of you know this, I live in New York City. When I started my business, I worked a 9-to-5 where I made about $30K a year, I think, in New York City, and my rent was more than I made each month. And I was investing in coaching, which I literally couldn't afford, and trying to run a business on fumes. And so the pressure to make money, just to say, like, I feel you and I hear you, was very, very real. And I think that's part of the pattern, right? We put so much pressure. It's like, I need to make money. And so then the pressure goes on, like, and that's what creates the pressure cooker situation. And then you hear someone say, well, just release the pressure. And it's like, but you don't understand. I need that money. So let me just read this before Tanika says, Tiffany, I personally isolated my limiting beliefs that came out publicly with what I battled with, but I think loving yourself through the failures work. Do that thing that will fulfill you anyway. Stephanie says, so true. So I think, Tanika, you're speaking exactly to it. The work is at every single stage, whether you're feeling that pressure to make cash or you're making money and then, your expenses change in business, or you feel like the only way to get to the next level is to put pressure on yourself, or you hear the noise online that you're supposed to create a certain thing or to hit a certain income level. I think at every stage of the game if this is your pattern, for some of you, this might not be your pattern and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. But for everyone here where this is your pattern, I think it's just fascinating to see how this can show up at every stage of business, and just to take a look outside of business and see where this pattern shows up outside of business, and how the places, the areas in outside of business that maybe it doesn't show up, so you can have that evidence that, oh, when I don't apply pressure, this is what it feels like and this is what happens. The antidote, so anytime we want to shift a pattern, whether it's a pattern of applying pressure or a different mindset pattern, one of the things I like to think about for pattern interrupting is really, what is that opposite action? What is the opposite thing you can do that is opposite of the pattern you've been engaged in? Because if we think about how the brain works, the brain is really basic. It's like a computer, and it works through repetition. The reason this is a pattern for so many of us is we just have learned it at a young age, and we have just been running that machine in our brain. It is just on autopilot. It's just like a really strong muscle. So to create a new pattern, we have to start thinking, but also actively doing something different than the automatic pattern, which requires conscious thought. So patterns they just kind of happen automatically. And what I think that looks like in business, like on a very conscious level, is doing the work to really, I was saying like love on yourself, but really and truly like love on. That's why I talk with my clients about celebration so much, like love on and celebrate like every damn thing about your business and yourself, and where you're at. If you've made $1, like celebrate the F out of that dollar. If you have put out an email, celebrate the heck out of that email, and love on and celebrate yourself. Almost like someone would think that you're a little crazy with how much you're loving on yourself, and doing the mindset work to be just so like almost like brainwashing yourself, happy and grateful for where you're at. So again, it's like if you've made, I remember when I started my business, it was like my first client and my first online sale. It was like I had to really practice just being so grateful for that, and being like getting into the place where I could be so grateful around that. And then what I had to do actively, that I found really, really important, is setting my life up in a way to release pressure. So for me, and this is not what I'm suggesting for everyone, but for me, what I had to start to notice is how easy it was for me to create situations in life that added pressure onto my business or onto my life, because I thought that's what I needed to perform. I'm an ex-actress, and like this was something I had to learn in acting. I was an actress for 10 years, and this got easier with time. I had to build things into my life to release the pressure off acting so I could go into an audition room and not put pressure on that audition. And one of those things when I was acting is I always had a bar job, even if I booked a great commercial. When I started my business, one of the things I did is I started, y'all, and I like have zero shame about this, I started picking up side jobs to make extra money, to pay for my coach and to pay for my business, and to just release the pressure off of needing to book a client, off of needing to make money. Because then I could really show up my business pressure free, doing the mindset work. I love myself. I'm so good at good with where I'm at. I'm so happy to be in the process and to be doing this. Kind of like if you think about dating, I had to do the work to love myself and be so happy being single. And then I had to set up my life so that was true, and to put myself in a situation where I wasn't going to constantly, make myself feel crappy for being single, but where I was really going to love being single. Same in business. I think some of the practical is how can you start setting your life up so you're not setting yourself up for situations that create pressure. Something I see with my clients who are at 6 figures and scaling. So I work with people who've never booked a client before, to clients who are at 6 figures scaling and going high, scaling to $1 million. Something I notice happens really in the online space a lot, and something I'm really mindful of right now, is how easy it is to start getting into the trap if you're think pressure is the thing, to start trying to make your life, creating pressure in your life by buying the more expensive house, the more expensive car, the more, and this is not from a bad money mindset place, y'all. I love money. I love money mindset. I'm all about, using your money and creating flow with money. However, I think sometimes, and this is, I guess, a little money mindset, I think sometimes we take what money mindset teachings are, which is just spend all your money and it will flow back to you. We understand that the wrong way, and we actually use that as a way to create pressure, right? We spend in a way that puts a lot of pressure on the business to perform. It's well, now I have to book those clients or I'm not going to be able to pay rent. And you essentially subconsciously will create ebbs and flows in your money situation to create that pressure. Or I've seen people do this even with their relationships. They'll create fights with their significant other because that creates pressure on the situation. And it's well, now I have to go put this pressure into my business so I can get results. Let me know if that's making sense. So in terms of how do we deal with the pressure, I think first and foremost, it's how do you love on yourself and just really do that mindset work to be so grateful and happy with where you're at. And something I think about, I opened up some spots. This may be a good way to describe it. I opened up some spots in my coaching business this month because my team opened up some more space. It would have been really easy for me, I have to book those spots. I have to book those spots or it means something. And I had to love on myself and love on where I'm at in business and literally remove the pressure of it is totally fine if I don't book those spots. Those spots are for the right person. I absolutely care about it. I absolutely want it. And I'm detaching from when this happens or how this happens. And I think the action then becomes about showing up, doing the thing, and releasing the need for a result. And I can hear people's brains clicking because I think that is one of those things that's where it sounds counterintuitive. It's but if I don't put pressure on it, doesn't that mean I don't care? Will I not show up? Or how will the results show up? Or manifesting says I have to obsess over the thing. And I think we've talked about this in here before. I think it's really thinking about something, I'm trying to see if I have something to hold on to. It's the difference between needing something so bad because you have pressure and then showing up from that energy in your business. I have to book those clients. I have to make money. I have to have my webinar turn out perfectly or whatever, versus everything's all good. I know I'm good enough. I love my business. I love what I'm doing. I trust that things are going to work out. I'm going to show up and this webinar is going to turn out exactly how it's supposed to. And I'm going to work with exactly the people I'm meant to. And if the webinar is amazing, that is so great. And if it isn't perfect, that's okay too. If I book this client, that's amazing. If not, that's a great learning opportunity, or that's going to lead to the right client coming in my door. It's really just creating that detachment that removes some of the pressure. And you can't create that detachment, I believe, until you first are doing that internal work to know, I love myself and I am so good no matter what. Everything is just so good no matter what. Which again sounds a little like brainwashing, but I think that's really the deep work. And then just uncovering when things are coming up, what is coming up? When you're no, but I still want to put pressure, where's that pressure coming from? Why is there still a want to put pressure? Or when you're doing the work to love on yourself, what's coming up around why you can't love yourself? Is there a fear coming up? Is there a story coming up? Well, I can't love myself until X, Y, and Z. And I think that's where I'm making it sound like it's just affirmations. Like, it's not just about affirming yourself to removing the pressure, but I think that's where you can start to see, for all of you, like whoever, or if you're journaling or if you're working with someone, you can really start to see what's going on under the hood and what's creating that pressure, so that, or what's creating that block from loving yourself, so that you can do that work to turn that up to a 10. Tanika says, yes, celebrate. That's right, Kim. Let me know if that makes sense. I'm trying to take a broad concept and make it general for everyone here. And I realize while this is a pattern that's really common, what drives the pattern can be a little different for everyone. So I want to be mindful about that. Something that feels important to say around this is something we were talking about earlier. And I was chatting with some mastermind sisters and a coach friend of mine who does some healing work around this sort of thing. And what we were talking about is how, and this is something I mentioned earlier, how a lot of times this pattern of pressure, it can be a trauma response. And so again, like, I'm very, very mindful here. We're talking about this loosely, but this might be a safety mechanism for many of you that your brain has created, whether it's trauma with a capital T or lowercase t, as a way it has learned to essentially survive based on, different responses from things that have happened in your life. And so I think, again, like, so much compassion and love here. I'm not trying to say, like, this is super simple. I've been doing this work for a long time. I'm also not saying it has to take a long time for you to shift this or to get results in your business, but just to create some compassion. If this is a pattern you're finding it challenging to move through, that's normal. And for many of us, that's a pattern that's been going on for a long time. And it's a pattern we cling on to really tightly because of how it serves us, and not how it serves us like, well, how's that serving you? But I think on a very deep level, it serves many people because it is acting as that self-protection mechanism, and it's how we know how to survive in the world, essentially. I think I've been very transparent with this group before. Like, I've experienced different traumas in my past, and for sure, this is part of where this pattern for me has shown up. And so when I say I've been doing this work, y'all, I've been doing this work for mindset work for a while, because there are just layers to it. And I think just saying that, like, and I'm proud of the work I've done, and there's no shame in that. And I will probably be doing this work forever. And I say that just to normalize it. And while I'm doing that work, it's not like I have to wait until it's perfect or until this pattern never shows up again. I can still have results in my business. I can just start to see faster and easier in my business where this pattern shows up, and start to remove it from my business, so I'm not using my business as my self-soothing tool. And I can also see the patterns showing up elsewhere in my life. Tanika says, mindset work never ends. Mindset work never ends. And thank God, because how boring would life be then? But I joke with my coach a lot. Every time I'm like, all right, I've arrived, I'm at a new level. And it's like, universe comes and smacks me in the face. It's like, hi, here you go. Welcome to your next mindset level. Welcome to this bullshit you have to work through. So y'all, mindset work never ends. I support clients with it. Like, this is what I do for a living, and I'm still doing the work literally every single day. And I cannot say that enough. And I want to say that so transparently. It's not something I'm just like, this is something you should do. I literally work on this every day, and I literally still spend a lot of money getting support around this, because it's that transformative and it's that important. And I say that just to normalize. I feel like I had something else I wanted to share around this. I always write a bunch of notes and then I never actually really look at them. But let me know while I'm thinking about what else I want to share if you have any questions around this, or if you want me to clarify anything we were talking about. I think one of the main things I wanted to say is I really think this pattern is a sneaky one, again, because I don't think this is how, I think it's so counterintuitive to what society teaches us and to what many people have grown up believing is true. And so I think it's not just shifting the mechanism internally and learning to approach business and life in a different way. I think it's also having to shift the societal narrative in your head that it's okay and that can actually work. And then I think the other piece here that's just really important to remember, and I think this goes with any type of mindset work you're doing, is as you're it is ongoing work, and it is shifts can happen really quickly, and shifts can happen in your business really quickly. I am please hear me. I'm not saying anything has to take a long time, and it's also okay if it does take a long time, right? There's no pressure. I think that's part of it. And y'all, like my business was not an overnight success. And that's okay. But I think the piece that's important when you're doing mindset work and you're having those shifts, something I find is there's oftentimes a lag between when your head understands something and when you have a shift on a cellular level in your business, in your body. There is absolutely a mind-body connection. And when you have patterns and mechanisms in the brain that have been running for decades, there is a connection cellularly in your body and how it shows up. This is not my area of expertise. I know people who really work with the body and that embodiment. But what that means is sometimes when you're making those shifts, it literally will feel uncomfortable. And not because you're doing even something hard, but because you're shifting things on a cellular level, and that kicks up stuff that doesn't feel right. And I offer that because I know that's been something I've experienced, and I then think, oh, this doesn't work, or I must be doing something wrong, and that can kick the pattern back up. And I think of it like that pattern just fighting, where it's like, don't get rid of me, I'm here for a reason. And your body will fight that, and it can in your body feel very, very uncomfortable. And so I offer that to say, if whether you're shifting a pattern, like putting pressure on yourself, or you're shifting a different pattern, a different mindset, or a different belief, know that sometimes that discomfort, it's not just like you have to move, do uncomfortable things to create success, but sometimes literally that discomfort and feeling it's actually the shift in your body, and your body trying to, it hasn't fully embodied or had that full cellular change, and it can feel really, it just feels funky. I don't know if anyone's experienced that, but I think that's helpful to know, so you don't then kind of regress back to the old pattern, because that feels more normal and safe, even though it's not serving you. Tanika says, please share more about the receiving energy, Kim. Oh gosh, what do you want to know about the receiving energy? That's such a great question, or a great thing. Let me know specifically what you want to hear about receiving energy. We can chat receiving for a little bit. I think overall what while Tanika's typing in what she means specifically, or what she wants to hear specifically, when we think about the energy around receiving, and whether it's money or receiving love or receiving success, I believe, I mean, I can visualize it. There's an energy that is, it's kind of like relaxed and open palms, that is, I am open to receive. And I think to be open to receive, if you literally, I don't know if you guys can see me, if you literally think about sitting this way with your palms open and kind of just relax and lean back, it's an energy that is very relaxed, it's very calm, and it's even as I'm sitting here, it's sort of and I'm all good. I'm so open to receive. I'm so I can receive something and pull it in and it would feel good, but I'm also so okay here. Versus what I think happens a lot, and where a lot of people energetically get blocked receiving in business, is there's either this, which is that pressurized, desperate, I need something so bad, that desperate energy, which you can see, even as I'm demonstrating that, it's really hard to receive with closed fists, and it's that very frantic energy. I describe it to clients when you're leaning forward like that, what happens? It makes someone on the other side lean back. If I lean back like this and I'm just kind of open to receive, what happens? You want to lean in. We'll use dating analogies again, but if in relationships, if you're open to receive a relationship, the easiest way, it's not to not care, and it's not to not give a fuck. You absolutely have to show up and care. But if you've ever noticed, for those of you, whether you're married or single and you've dated or you've been in relationships, it's that energy that's present, but it's I'm all good no matter what. It's kind of leaning back. That draws people in, right? That makes people want to pay attention. That makes people want to, if you're literally, if you think about a couple, whoever's doing this, the other person's doing that. That's that open receptive energy. Versus, I think when we're talking about that pressurized, desperate energy, that's when, instead of leaning back, you're doing this. And then what happens when you're doing this? That makes, if someone on a date is I need this, I want this, you have to marry me. I don't know who would ever do that. It makes, that repels people. That's the opposite of being receptive. And then I think the other side of desperate that also blocks off reception is literally this. It's still open palms, but it is stop, and it pushes away reception. And so I think when we're talking about business and receiving money, what blocks receiving clients and receiving money, it's the energy of I'm desperate, I need this now, closed fist, or it's I don't think I'm good enough, I don't know if I can handle this, I'm scared of this, I don't know if it's good, all the different we could do a live training on this. I think there's so many blocks that can come up and stories around like why it's not okay or safe to receive, and that's the stop, and that will block receiving as well. Let's see. Tanika, let me know if that made sense, and for all of you listening. Tanika says, making offers authentically and believing that it's what prospects are truly looking for. Prospects. So I think it's literally what you're saying, Tanika. I think the receiving energy and making those offers, I think it is doing the work around getting clear. So something I'll sometimes have clients do is get clear on why should someone hire you? And not from a like, why should someone hire you? But really from the place of, why do you believe someone should hire you? If anyone who's studied like sales strategy or sales training, there's a question that I honestly think is kind of icky, but it's a really great question to play with what you're talking about, which is, why should someone, hopefully you didn't lose me, I'm still here. Again, I think this is kind of an icky question. I don't ask my clients this very, very often outside of very specific situations, but I think it's just a great way to think about owning your work to that degree where you like really, really believe that that your work is what people are looking for. I think journaling around, why should someone spend money on this? Like, why do I believe this is so valuable? Why do I believe someone should go in debt to invest in this? And again, I'm not suggesting you suggest people should go in debt, but just to start thinking about like, how is it this valuable? I think a lot of times if we think about COVID, for example, if someone had the cure to COVID, they would know it's so valuable. They would believe that's what people are looking for so much that they would be able to show up without putting pressure on people, knowing that's what people want, knowing people should spend money on that because they know that's what people are really looking for. And I think they'd be able to show up from that place. It's like they're actually they're energetically showing up. They're excited. They know you need to have this thing without putting pressure on it because they know, of course, you want it. It's kind of a silly example, but I think it's coming from that mindset. It's like, what do I need to believe about my work to think it's the equivalent to a COVID, what's it called? Inoculation. My words today, it's the end of the day, y'all. You'll have to bear with me. But like a cure for that, like how can I, in my industry, how can I get so sold on my work? What do I need to believe about myself? What do I need to believe about my work? What do I need to believe about what people take away from my work to feel that excited that I'd want to show up believing people need this the way they need a cure for COVID. And I think that's a really great place to tap into from selling and making offers and I think this is a great way to kind of close out this thought. It's like, if you're coming from that place, if you know you're like, I know I'm fully bought into my work and what I do, and I know I'm a great investment for my clients. Like, I know that. And so because of that, it makes it really easy for me to make offers because I can just say it like, it's not like from a frantic, desperate place. It's like, I just freaking know that. And so I feel great offering it. And because I know that, it makes it really easy for me to release the pressure around needing someone to buy or say yes to validate me, or needing a certain result to validate me because I've already done that validation for myself. So I think the irony there is, I think in some ways it almost, I think releasing that pressure and coming from that internal place of I love myself, I love my work, I think it's so great. It actually, I think, allows you to show up even more, but in a way that pressure couldn't. Tanika, let me know if that makes sense, because we're going a little off topic, so I want to make sure that does make sense. Wait, Stephanie says, I love using the dating analogy. It makes so plain sense because everyone can relate. I'm so glad that resonated. Yes, everyone has either been that person, said with love, no judgment, or been on a date with someone who is coming in that way. And it just helps this land. Tanika says, yes, please do a separate live. Okay, on money and receiving, is that what we're talking about, Tanika? Totally. If you guys want lives on anything, you just tell me and we'll do. I'll make sure I add it to the queue. I sound British again. Tiffany says, I think I'm too desperate. Awesome at what I do, but I really struggle to get clients. Manika says, love this. So Tiffany, I wonder, just something to play with if you feel like you're desperate. I think it'd just be really interesting to play around with what is that, like, what do you think the desperation, like, how does that serve you? You don't have to answer this here, but just something to think about, because I think anytime we're putting pressure or desperate, it's just interesting to think, like, how is this serving me? Like, what do I get from this? I know when I was putting more pressure, I thought that that's what I needed to show up, or like the way I was supposed to do it. And how is it showing up for you? And what would it look like to release some of that desperation? Like what comes up around that? And I think it'd just be interesting to journal around something that, and you have to tell me if this is true, or I'm like reading one sentence here, but don't mind me as I resettle. Something I know for me and for a lot of my clients is a lot of times when you're going through this kind of stuff, and when there is that desperate energy, there's a ton of fear underneath it. Super normal. Brain's wired to have fear. I have fear. You have fear. Like everyone has fear. So that's not a call out. It's just normal. So I think sometimes it's really helpful. Like if we're going to release that desperation and do that work to like love ourselves now, because it sounds like, you know, you are awesome at what you do, but to be able to like detach a little bit. I think sometimes it's really powerful to go through like, what are those fears I have that are causing some of that pressurized, desperate energy? You don't have to do anything with them, but just literally just see what they are so that you can let them go. Let me know if that makes sense. I think it's, we hear about detachment and manifesting, and I think it's such, and detachment, for those of you who don't know, I think that's really what, like when you release pressure, I actually think of releasing pressure, but still showing up and wanting something and showing up fully and playing full out. To me, that's what detachment is. I think detachment and manifesting, I'm almost like, I don't know, like what is this whole detachment thing? But I really think of like how I've come to understand and how it serves me in my business is I can show up fully, I can want something, I can play full out. I am just going to detach from needing a specific result, or from needing something to show up a certain way, or from having an expectation around how something's going to look. And that helps me to remove the desperation, because as soon as I need something to look a certain way, as soon as I need a certain income month, as soon as I need a certain number of clients, as soon as I need to hit this thing, that's where the pressure and desperation comes in. Whether it's because I literally need that money, or because I need it to feel good, you know, fill in the blank, whatever the reason is, as soon as that happens, that's when I find personally, I get into that desperate, pressurized energy. And so I think it can just be helpful. I don't know if that's helpful to hear as a reflection. Let's see. Tanika says, yes, please, on what authentic offers sound like and your comfortability with discussing money and receiving. It does make sense. On what authentic offers sound like and your comfortability with discussing money and receiving. Sarah says this was super helpful. Thank you. I'm so glad this was helpful. I love you all. Wait, hold on. I'm trying to understand Tanika's comment. On what authentic offers sound like and your comfortability with discussing money and receiving. So just so I understand, because we'll do a live this month on this. I think what you're saying is like, just like selling authentically, or like having your offer sound more authentic. And then are you talking about like, and so like I feel so comfortable talking about money and receiving, like talking about where that came from and like unpacking a little bit in terms of the work I've had to do to talk about money and receiving, because we can definitely do a live around that. I will just to kind of close this out. I think this is just like, because I want to keep this so real with all of you, because I think in the online space we hear results, and like it's my job to share results with you so that you know I'm like what's going on, and like what, like I share results a lot of times because I want you to see what's possible in the online space. And I think it's really important to be transparent with what goes on, like the real behind those numbers, because I think it's also really easy to get frustrated. And I like, even with talking about money and talking about results and talking about receiving money and talking about offers, I want to be so transparent with you all that I have always been good at sales outside of my own business, and I had to do a metric fuck ton of work inside my business to feel good talking about sales, and to feel good talking about money, and to feel good publicly talking about money. And so I say that because I want to make sure no one leaves this feeling discouraged, and instead like sees this as like if I can do this, you can do this. If I can start a business in New York City as an ex-actress, like moving here with no job, like scraping by, barely able to pay my rent, working until 3 a.m. I was scared to post online when I started my business, like literally scared to put a single post out. Like if I can build a business, you can too. I also like have trauma in my life, depression. Like my coach, I adore her. I still work with her. I think, so I worked with her for 6 months. I barely got results, and I renewed with her because that's how much mindset work I had to do. Not because she wasn't good at her job, but like I just had so much to unpack, you all. I think I spent like the first year of my business was basically me going through unpacking all of my stuff and having to rewire my brain. And so I share that because I just, like, I hear it from clients, and I know that there are people in this group who go through the same thing. Like, that is normal, like normal, like that's the human experience. And the only difference, like, I really and truly, I'm obsessed with entrepreneurialism for a million reasons, but one of the things one of my clients always says is it's just a really big crash course in personal development. And one of the reasons I love entrepreneurialism is so much of it is about doing the work up here so that you can run a business and receive money and talk about money and be, you know, have authentic offers, all of those pieces we're talking about here. And what a gift. Like, how beautiful is it that everyone in this space, we've all signed up to be in a space where it's like, yeah, we get to do work we love and make money, but also we get to do the work on ourselves that the majority of the world is never going to do because they're just not forced to in the same way. So anyway, that's a little side tangent. I felt called to share that. Okay, Tanika says yes, exactly where that came from. Okay, well, I'll play with that and think about a live we can do around that. And Tanika says, by the way, all the work that you do, that you have shared with us, is working for me immensely. I've gotten multiple requests to book my paid clarity and coaching consultation. So thank you so much for your transparency. You're gonna make me cry. That makes me so happy, y'all. Yay, that makes me so happy. Tanika, I clearly love this work, so nothing could make me happier than to hear that you are getting those requests. So keep doing the work. And for all of you, share those things with me if you have wins of any sort, because I'm literally gonna start crying because it makes me so happy. But nothing makes me happier. That's why I do this work. I love you all so much. Thank you for being in this group. Thanks for watching. If you're watching on the replay, leave your comments, requests. Will be for questions and requests for anything you want me to do a live on. And I will be back next week. I'm gonna go bawl my eyes out now, and I will see you next week with another live training. Bye, y'all.